Hello guys and welcome to my new video. I promise you this deck is the secret meta breaker right now. Amber, Emerald, ChromiDogs. It can go super wide, super fast, and it doesn't have a bad matchup. Live deck profile today, but before we dive into my deck list, some huge news from the Austrian Lorcana community. Enchanted Tour Winter Edition 2025 will take place at December the 20th, just before Christmas. Main theme will be Frozen, so Elsa, Anna and Olaf will be there. The tournament is the biggest Lorcana tournament in Austria, hosted once again by the Rare Hunter shop. Unfortunately, and I really have to say unfortunately, it is not a CCQ, a little bit disappointing actually, because it will be a 150 to 200 player tournament. But we have a special guest there. Matthew Robert Davis will be there, Lorcana artist. And among his artworks are Elsa Enchanted, the legendary Elsa, Yen Seed, 3-cost Ursula Singer, and the legendary Hades, the blue one. Everyone is playing in Blurple right now. So come, buy your tickets, join the event, and let your cards signed by a famous Lorcana artist. I'm looking forward to meet you guys there. I will link the site where you can buy tickets in the video description below. And now let's dive into my last fabled live deck profile video. Have fun, let's go. So guys, this will be my last live deck profile video for my fabled decks before we go into the gameplay for the upcoming set championships and DLCs in Bologna and Milwaukee. This deck is super quick, super fast, you can go super wide, and spoiler ahead, this deck actually doesn't have a real bad matchup except for purple steel. This can be a little tricky sometimes, but let's go through all my card choices real quick. We have Lady as a 1-drop, and I gotta tell you guys, this deck had 32 1-drop characters in this list, so you can play a character or even 2 or 3 each turn, and which makes this deck really strong against Blurple, because Blurple has problems with wider boards and this deck can go super wide. Lady 0-3 quests for 1, and when she has 3 strength she gets +2 lore, so she can quest for 3. To filter through your hand cards a bit, 4 copies of Bobby Simuruski. You draw a card, then you discard another. For example, you can discard one of the Lilos, so you can play it later in a turn from your discard pile, and you can filter through your hand. So you have those cards in hand. You really need, for some evasive power, we have 4 copies of Pegasus, 1 strength, 1 willpower, quest for 1, and has evasive. Everyone knows him. Then we have 2 0 strength, 4 willpower characters for once, Nala and also Little John. They are basically small weenie characters, but with their 4 willpower they are so hard to take out, and for some decks they have really problems to deal with them. So dropping a couple of them is usually at least 1 lore, maybe 2. But the game plan here, I will go over the game plan in a second, is a little different with other aggro decks. So this is for those 1-drop characters, but we have even more 1-drop characters. Uninkable, we have the cursed Merfolk, 0 strength, 1 willpower, quests for 2, and whenever this character is challenged, your opponent has to discard a card from his hand. So pretty strong against most decks, because there isn't much card draw right now in Lorcana, and the fabled meta doesn't have much card draw available, and some decks struggle with card draw. So Merfolk is a good 1-drop if you want to go fast and get quick lore. Also Uninkable, Daisy Duck, 1 strength, 4 willpower, quests for 2 as well. And whenever she quests, your opponent reveals the top card of his deck. If it's a character card, he can put it into his hands, otherwise it's going under the deck. So Daisy, you have to play her a little bit with caution, because you don't want to give your opponent so many cards in hand. And since there are not many song decks, action deck right now in Lorcana, Daisy could be a little bit tricky, but still with her 4 health and 2 lore, she is a threat for like making a lot of lore during a game. And also Uninkable 1-drop, another lady 1 strength, 2 willpower, and as long as you have a tramp character in play, she gets also +1 lore. So she usually quests for 2 lore. This is it for the 1-drop characters. As I told, I have 32 1-drop characters, and this is basically the game plan. You want to find all those weenie characters, flood the board, and go wide, and then quest out in 1 or 2 turns. This is basically the game plan. We have 2-drop characters. We have the Ursula Deceiver. You can snipe 1 song card from your opponent's hand, which is pretty strong against purple steel. Played at the right time, you can snipe 1 Thank the Raging Fire, protect your board, and go even wider and quest easily. So your characters can't be taken out by songs if you play Ursula Deceiver. Then we have the 2-cost Tramp, 1 strength, 3 willpower. If you have a lady character in play, you can play him for 1 ink less. He also quests for 1 lore, and when you play him, you can count the characters on your board and give strength equal to the number of characters on your board to another character. So he has a good synergies with the dual ink lady. For example, you can play him cheaper and you can buff the strength of the dual ink lady, so she quests for 3 maybe. Also for 2 we have the earlier mentioned Lilo, 1 strength, 2 willpower, quests for 2, and at the beginning of your turn, if she's in your discard pile, you can play her for 2 ink, exert it, but still you put a character on board and your opponent has to deal with her at some point, otherwise she will quest for 2 the next turn. So the best choice here is if you discard her with Bobby Simuruski or late in the game, and then you can replay it turn by turn from your discard pile. Also for 2 ink Gogo Tomago, she can easily close a game on her own. 2/2 evasive quest to 1, and when you play her you can pay 2 ink, and then you count the damage on one of the opposing characters and you gain equal lore to the damage on one of your opponent characters. So if you manage to deal some damage to an opposing character, you don't have many characters with a lot of strength, but you can buff them with Tramp, for example, and then you can use Gogo to close the game alone. That's it for the 2-drop characters. So you see, more than half of the deck or 2/3 of the deck you can play with 1 ink or 2 ink. So this is pretty strong, pretty fast. And I've seen some lists not including this card, but I think this card is just too strong to not include her in the deck. The 3-drop lady, 2 strength, 2 willpower, quest for 2, and when you play her you can play a character with 2 cost or less for free. So you can basically go 1-drop, in turn 2 you play 2 1-drop characters, in turn 3 you drop the lady and then you play a 1 or 2-drop character for free, go wide. So you have 5 characters on board by turn 3, which is pretty strong. And for example, you can go drop 3 1-drop characters in your first 2 turns. Then you go lady, play a free Ursula Deceiver, snipe a song from your opponent's hand, and then you're pretty safe to quest out the game. What makes this deck a real menace against some control decks and challenge heavy decks is this card, Emerald Chromicon. It's an item, 3-cost, uninkable, and every time in a turn of your opponent, if one of your characters gets banished, you can send 1 character back to its owner's hand. So you can choose either the characters from your opponent, or you can also choose your own characters to like bounce them back to your hand and replay them the turn after. So this protects your board against multiple challenges, so your opponent has to sequence in a very efficient way, and Emerald Chromicon makes this deck really nasty and like awful to play against, because your opponent is not able to make some mistakes here in sequencing and challenging your characters. Otherwise he will lose his board just by taking out your characters. So this is it for the 3-drop slot. We have 2 more cards in this deck, only 2 copies of the dual ink Floodborn or Shift Lady, 5-cost, uninkable, 4 strength, 4 willpower, quests for 2. She has shift 3, so you can shift her with cost 3 on either one of your lady characters, and when you play her, you can get 2 character cards from your discard pile, with cost 2 or less back to your hand. So you can like flood your board, then quest out, and when your characters have been taken out, you can play the Floodborn Lady and get your small characters back to your hand and play them again. You can shift her, you can play with 5 ink, but usually you don't go up so high in ink. You usually play this deck with 3 or maximum 4 ink, because you can have so many options with less ink. And I've already tested some games. I only had 2 ink available and I managed to win this game because I only found my 1-drop and 2-drop characters, and I played multiple characters each turn, and 2 ink was enough to win these games. And last but not least, your draw power, the 7 cost inkable tramp, 2 strength, 6 willpower quests for 2 for each character on your board. And that's why we have so many small characters in this deck. You pay 1 ink less. So I managed to play this character in turn 4 for just 2 ink. Then, when you play him, you draw cards equal to the number of characters on your board, and then you have to discard the same number of cards from your hand. So basically, the game plan here is to go wide, to be patient, to not quest early, only if you can, only if you are really sure that your characters survive. And in turn 4, you can sequence tramp into tramp into tramp, because you can use 3 ink for playing the first tramp. You can use the remaining ink for playing a second tramp. And if you manage to draw tramp into tramp and another tramp, you can drop 3 tramps in 1 turn. The first one you play for 2 ink, the second one for 1 ink, and the third tramp would be for free. And then you have like 15 or 16 lore on board, and you can almost finish the game in 1 turn, and your opponent has to deal with a bunch of characters, and usually it's not enough. It's not enough for your opponent to deal with all your characters and the remaining lore you can gain with Goku Tamago or other cards. So this is the basic game plan here. The deck, someone called it ChromiDogs, and I really love this deck name because you have the Emerald Chromicon you can abuse against challenge heavy decks, and against most control decks like Blurple or Green Blue, you just go wide, go fast, quest out and win the game. So this is basically the game plan. Right now I don't have much time going into the store, but I use all my time available to test out the decks I show you in my videos. I will link all my recent deck videos for Fabled Meta in the video description. Yeah, basically I've tested this deck quite a lot the last couple days, and I really like it, even though it's maybe not my usual type of deck I like to play and the usual style I like to play, like be patient, don't quest, and then finish the game in 1 or 2 turns. But if you like such decks, this deck is for you. And yeah, you can annoy your opponent with Emerald Chromicon and going wide, because everyone is playing Blurple right now or blue-green. As I said, just purple steel is maybe a bad matchup, but still winnable if you manage to like drop the Ursula Deceiver at the right time and don't quest too early and give your opponents too many chances to challenge your board. So if you like this video, give it a like, and if you're new to the channel, I'm always happy to welcome new viewers. Hit subscribe and join my channel. I'm always happy about new viewers joining my channel, so I'm very happy to have you. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Flokki.